Hello everyone, this is chess expert David Loscom, and today I'm going to show you guys a really cool game that was taken from the 2020 Speed Chess Championship. Now, it is Parham on the white side and Magnus Carlsen on the black side. And this is a variation of the Ruy Lopez, where none of the pieces or pawns have been traded off. So that makes this position pretty cool, because there's just so much that can happen and there's just so many different possibilities with each move. Well, Magnus Carlsen had actually been slow playing this, kind of trying to see where white was going, and so he actually ended up playing, well, Magnus had the bishop on f8, and he ended up playing g6 and bishop g7, so he's just, gradually improving his position, and at the same time he's asking white, what are you going to do with the center? What are you going to do with your pieces? And here, well, Parham makes a mistake. Yeah, he plays b3. And the idea here is to play the bishop out to b2 and, perhaps put some pressure down that diagonal. But it doesn't work out because b3 weakens c3. And Magnus Carlsen sees this right away, and he responds with d5. And this is essentially going to bust open the center, and at the end of the day, when all of these pieces are off the board, this bishop is going to be bearing down on that c3 pawn. And that was Magnus Carlsen's idea here. He essentially waited to play d5. He waited until Parham played b3, and then he struck back with d5. So it is a pretty brilliant move. And here, the game continued with d takes e5. Now, I'm actually going to cheat here because I don't remember all the moves, and there are a lot of things that happen here, so let's see here. So after d5, d takes e5, we have knight takes e4. Well, the knight is under attack, so you either have to move the knight or you have to capture back on e5. So after knight takes e4, we have knight takes, and then we have pawn takes, and then we have bishop out to g5. And this is an important intermezzo move. So, the queen has to do something. And you really don't want to play f6, because that's just not a very good move. It weakens the king, and black would be behind some material, and it could also lead to a trade of bishops. And you really want to keep this bishop, because that's a really nice piece. Okay, so after bishop to g5, we see queen c8. Bishop takes on e4, and bishop takes back on e4. So then at that point we have rook takes e4, and we have knight takes on e5. I'm going to go ahead and take off all of those extra pieces, because that was quite a lot that came off the board. So after knight takes here on e5, then we reach a position where black is a little bit better. Now, after knight takes e5, Magnus Carlsen here in a few moves, he didn't find the best continuation. Yeah, so we're going to say knight takes here, and Magnus simply just trades everything. The rook takes, and bishop takes. And he ends up with some pressure on c3, but he has some difficulty getting that a8 rook into the game. A better move that Magnus could have played that would have allowed him to retain his advantage would be queen out to f5, hitting the rook and the knight at the same time. So white doesn't have time to defend everything. And after a move like queen to e2, then Magnus could take back, and the difference here is that after the queens come off the board, Magnus Carlsen will have a much easier time getting that a8 rook into the game. And then this pawn is under attack and they cannot move because the rook would be lost. And at this point, let's say that the rook moves to defend the pawn, then Magnus Carlsen could play this rook maybe out to e8 and claim that he's better because he's going to have this open file. And then, you know, this pawn cannot move to c4 because bishop after b2 is a threat to pick up the a3 pawn. So that's, you know, another thing that's going on here. But essentially black's position is just a little bit better because of this pawn push b2 to b3. And Magnus Carlsen recognized that and was able to go for the advantage by pushing the pawn out to d5. And so that is a pretty interesting concept, because in chess you don't always have to make something happen right away. You can, you know, make some improving moves, get your bishops to a better square, get your rooks to a better square, and then if your opponent plays a weakening move, then you might want to just open up the game and put some pressure on that weakened point. Well, thank you all for watching, and I will see you next time.